It took me 47 years to read a note that was only 3 lines long. I held it on my wedding night. I held it in candlelight, in a room that was not yet mine, in a house I had entered as a wife only 4 hours before. 3 lines, pencil on paper, no name signed at the bottom. I followed what it said. I did not understand why. I folded it back into my prayer cap and put the cap into a cedar chest, and I did not look at it again for almost 9 years. When I did look, I still did not understand. 3 weeks ago, I buried my sister-in-law, Ruth. She was 71. I helped clean out her home. And in her own cedar chest, beneath her own wedding quilt, I found the second half of what she had been trying to tell me since before I married into her family. Not her brother, not the bishop, not my mother, not even my own husband knew what Ruth placed inside my prayer cap. I did not know, not really, for 47 years. But I am going to walk back through it now. Every clue she gave me, every one I missed. If you have ever held something small in your hands for years before you understood what it weighed, I think this story will stay with you. If these quiet evenings together mean something to you, I would be grateful if you subscribed. I am here most weeks, and I have more to tell than one life should hold. And would you leave me a word tonight about where you are listening from? I read every single one, and it keeps me company to know. My name is Miriam. I am 79 years old. I live alone now in a small house at the edge of what used to be my husband's family land, though the farm has been sold and the fields leased out to a neighbour's son, who grows soybeans where we once grew hay. My husband, Eli, passed 11 years ago. We were married for 36 years, and they were, by most measures, ordinary years, quiet ones. I say this because what I am about to tell you is not a story about my marriage. It is a story about the woman who made sure I survived the door I walked through to begin it. Ruth, my husband's brother's wife. She was 4 years older than me. She died with her secret still folded inside her. I am the one unfolding it now. The first clue came at my own wedding table. It was October of 1978. I was 19. The long table was set in the front room of Eli's family home, benches on both sides, platters of roasted chicken and bread and creamed celery laid end to end. Ruth sat beside me. She had been married to Eli's older brother Jonas for 4 years by then. She was 23. Partway through the meal, beneath the table, she reached over and took my wrist. Not my hand, my wrist. She gripped it the way you would grip a child who is about to step into a road. Her fingers pressed into the soft skin where my pulse sat. I looked at her. She was smiling. Her face was calm and pleasant, the face of a woman welcoming a new sister into the family. But her hand was not calm. Her hand was iron. I thought it was tenderness. I thought she was overwhelmed with feeling, the way women sometimes are at weddings. I placed my other hand over hers and squeezed back. She let go. I did not think about that grip again for 31 years. The second clue came 3 weeks before the wedding. Ruth had come to my mother's house to help with preparations. We were alone in the kitchen, kneading bread dough on the long wooden table my father had built the year I was born. The house smelled of flour and wood smoke from the stove. Ruth worked the dough steadily, pressing it forward with the heels of her hands, folding it back, pressing again. Without looking up, she asked, "Do you know where the back door leads, at the house?" I assumed she meant Eli's family home, the house I would move into after the wedding. I had been inside only twice. I told her no. She nodded. She said, "It opens onto the field road. If you walk the field road east, you reach the Yoder farm in 23 minutes, even in the dark." Then she went back to kneading. I laughed a little. I asked why I would need to know that. She did not answer. She did not laugh. She pressed the dough flat and folded it again, and we did not speak for a long while. I thought she was peculiar, a quiet woman with odd habits of conversation. I did not hear what she had given me. I did not hear it as a map. I want to pause here for a moment, because this is the part of the story where I begin to lay the clues beside each other, the way you might lay quilt squares on a table before you stitch them together. I did not do this then. I did not have the frame for it. In my world, you did not question the family you married into. The Ordnung held everything in place. You yielded. Gelassenheit. You trusted the elders, the structure, the quiet rhythm of how things were done. If Ruth seemed intense, my training told me to call it nerves or affection, or the strangeness of a woman who spent too much time alone. There was no space in my mind for the possibility that a sister-in-law might be trying to warn me. If you carry a story like this one, I would be so grateful if you let me know in the comments below. There is a link in the description where you can read more about the kinds of silence women carry in plain communities. Now let me take you to the wedding night. The third clue was the note itself. It was late. The wedding was over. The singing had ended. The guests had gone home or settled into other rooms. I was alone in the upstairs bedroom of Eli's family home for the first time as a married woman. The room was plain. A bed, a wooden chair, a small table, a kerosene lamp already lit. My prayer cap sat on the bed where someone had placed it for me. I picked it up to set it on the nightstand, and a square of paper fell out, folded twice. I opened it. Pencil, not pen. The handwriting was small and tilted to the left, as though the hand that wrote it had been hurried or working in poor light. 3 lines. I will tell you the first line now, because it is the one I obeyed that night. It said, "If he comes home late and quiet, do not be in the bedroom. Sleep downstairs. Lock the door." I read that line twice. I did not understand it. I thought perhaps it was an old tradition I did not know, a piece of advice passed from one wife to another, the way mothers sometimes tuck a note into a daughter's things before she leaves home. But something in the pencil, the tightness of the letters, the way the paper had been folded so small and pressed deep into the lining of the cap, something in it made me listen. I blew out the kerosene lamp. I carried a quilt downstairs. I found the small room off the kitchen, the one with a door that latched from the inside. I lay on the narrow bed in the dark, and I pulled the quilt to my chin, and I latched the door. I do not know how long I lay there before I heard it. Boots on the stairs. The upstairs bedroom door opening. A sound I could not name then, and will not name now. Then silence. Then the boots going down again, and the back door. The back door Ruth had told me about, opening and closing. I pulled the quilt over my head. I stayed until morning. I obeyed the note the way a child obeys a rule she does not understand, and that obedience saved me. But it would be 47 years before I understood what Ruth already knew the night she wrote it. The fourth clue did not come until Ruth was gone. It was the spring of 2025, 3 weeks after her funeral. I was helping Ruth's daughter, Anna, clean out the house Ruth had lived in for 48 years. In the upstairs bedroom, a room I had not entered in decades, there was a cedar chest at the foot of the bed. Anna opened it. Inside, beneath folded linens that smelled of lavender and age, was a quilt. Ruth's wedding quilt. I knew it by the pattern, a double wedding ring design in blues and whites. Anna asked if I wanted it. I lifted it out. It was heavier than I expected. I unfolded it slowly. Along the bottom border, stitched into the pattern in thread only slightly darker than the surrounding fabric, were words. Not a Bible verse, not a hymn line, a sentence. I could not read it at first. The stitching was tight, hidden inside the design the way a message might be hidden inside a hymn if you changed only one word. I carried it to the window. I held it up to the light. The sentence stitched into Ruth's wedding quilt was the second line of the note she had placed in my prayer cap 47 years before. The same words, the same plain instruction I had read by candlelight on my wedding night and never fully understood. Ruth had written it on paper for me, and then she had stitched it into her own quilt. She had carried it in her own cedar chest. She had slept under it for decades. I stood at that window with the quilt held up to the light, and my hands began to shake. And I did not know if I was shaking because of what I had found, or because of what I had failed to find for 47 years. The grip, the map, the note, the quilt. They had been speaking to me all along, in a language I did not learn until Ruth was no longer alive to hear me say I finally understood. And that is when I began to look back. That is when I laid all the pieces on the table. And what I saw, when I looked at them together, changed every memory I had of Ruth, and of the family I married into, and of the woman I thought I knew for nearly half a century. The pieces were all on the table now. The grip that was not tenderness. The question that was not small talk. The note that was not tradition. The quilt that was not decoration. I sat at my own kitchen table with the note and the quilt spread side by side. The evening light coming through the window the way it does in late spring when the sun takes its time leaving. I smoothed the quilt flat with both hands. I placed the note beside the border where Ruth had stitched the matching line. and I began to ask the questions I should have asked 47 years ago. Not to Ruth, she was gone, but to the people who remained. I asked carefully. I asked the way you ask when you already sense the answer, but need someone else to say it aloud. I asked around the edges, the way Ruth herself had always spoken. Never straight at the thing, always beside it, behind it, underneath it. I went to Anna first, Ruth's oldest daughter. She was 53 by then, living 2 farms over from where her mother had spent her whole married life. I sat in her kitchen. I did not bring the quilt. I did not bring the note. I brought a loaf of bread and a question I tried to make sound ordinary. I asked her if her mother had been happy in those early years. Anna was quiet for a long time. She poured coffee. She set the cups down. Then she told me something I had never known. She said that once, early in the marriage, before Anna herself was born, her mother had packed a bag, a small bag, 1 dress, 1 pair of shoes, a Bible. Ruth had walked out the back door of that house, the same back door she had mapped for me in my mother's kitchen, and she had taken the field road east. She had walked in the dark. She had reached the Yoder farm in what must have been close to 23 minutes. She was found there the next morning. She was brought back. Nothing was said publicly. The bishop came. There was a conversation behind a closed door. Ruth never spoke of it again. Anna said, she never spoke of it, but she stitched. And when Anna said those words, I felt the last tumbler fall into place. Ruth had not stopped speaking when they brought her back. She had only changed languages. I need to stop here for a moment, because what I am about to tell you is the thing that changed every memory I carry of Ruth. And I want you to hear it the way it came to me. Not all at once, but the way truth arrives when it has been patient for 47 years. If this story has stirred something you have been carrying quietly, I would be grateful if you shared it with someone who might need to hear another woman say these things aloud. And if you have not yet subscribed, I would welcome your company. I will be here again soon, and there is so much I have not yet said. Now I will tell you what the full note said. I have told you the first line, the one that kept me out of that bedroom. If he comes home late and quiet, do not be in the bedroom. Sleep downstairs. Lock the door. The second line, the one Ruth stitched into her wedding quilt, was an instruction. It said, keep your papers and your money inside the flour tin. No one looks there. The third line I had read dozens of times across the years, and always thought was an apology for the strangeness of the note itself. But standing in that spring light, with the quilt in my arms, I read it again, and I heard it for the first time. It said, I am sorry I cannot say this to your face. I read it aloud in that empty room, and I understood. Ruth could not say it to my face, because saying it aloud would have meant naming what was happening inside her own home. The note was not only a warning she had written for me, it was a confession she could not make any other way. She had folded her own suffering into a square of paper no bigger than a playing card, pressed it into my prayer cap, and hoped that I would listen to what she could not afford to speak. And then I saw it, all of it, at once. The way you see a quilt pattern only when you step back far enough. Ruth's grip on my wrist at the wedding table was not emotion. It was the grip of a woman holding another woman at the edge of something she had already fallen into, pressing a warning into skin because she could not press it into words. The question about the back door was not conversation. It was a rehearsed escape route. Ruth knew it took 23 minutes to reach the Yoda farm, because she had walked it herself, in the dark, alone, with a bag packed and a marriage she was trying to leave. The note was not old advice passed between wives. It was survival knowledge, paid for with Ruth's own nights, her own locked doors, her own listening for boots on stairs. And the quilt. The quilt was not craft, it was testimony. Ruth had taken the words she could not say to anyone, not to me, not to her daughter, not to the bishop, not to herself aloud, and she had stitched them into the one thing no one would ever think to read. She could not speak it. She could not leave it behind. So she stitched it, folded it, pressed it into my hands and into her own fabric, and hoped that someone, some day, would hold it up to the light. Ruth was known in our community as a quiet woman, a faithful wife, a fine quilter. She kept a clean home. She raised 4 children who grew up steady. She attended every service, sat on the women's side with her hands folded, sang every hymn from memory. She never raised her voice. She never complained. When people spoke of Ruth after her funeral, they said she was an example of Gelassenheit, of yielding, of grace under the weight of an ordinary life. And they were not wrong, but they were not right either. What I know now is that every stitch in that quilt was a sentence she could not say aloud. Every smile at a church meal was a door locked from the inside. Every visit to my mother's kitchen, every question about a road or a door or a direction, was a woman building an escape route for someone else because her own had been closed. The community saw obedience. I saw obedience too, for 47 years. What I see now is a woman who turned her own cage into a rescue boat and pushed it toward me with hands that never stopped shaking. And I did not notice the shaking, because I had been taught that shaking was just what women's hands did. I am 79 now. I sit in a quiet house. The fields outside my window are green with someone else's soybeans. The cedar chest at the foot of my bed holds 2 things that did not used to sit together: my prayer cap from my wedding night and Ruth's wedding quilt. I put them there myself. I fold them together now because they were always together. I just did not know it. I have learned that some acts of courage make no sound. I have learned that a woman can save your life so quietly that you do not hear it for decades. And by the time you turn around to thank her, the chair where she sat is empty. If you grew up in a world where silence was the only safe language, You know what it costs to pass a note. You know what it means when someone grips your hand too hard and smiles while she does it. You know that some women carry the whole weight of a family's truth in a quilt nobody thinks to unfold. I see you. I do. Some women do not get to be remembered for what they did. They get remembered for what they seemed to be. But the truth lives in the thread, if you learn to read it late enough. I did not save Ruth. That is the part I will carry for however many years I have left. She saved me, and I did not even know enough to try to save her back. But I can do this. I can unfold her quilt. I can hold it to the light. I can say her name in a room full of people she will never meet and tell them what she did. Ruth. If her name means something to you tonight, leave it below. Even just her name. I will read it. And I will be here next week with another truth I carried too long in a chest that should have been opened sooner. There is so much more I have not yet said.